You know that feeling when you're lying in bed at 3 in the morning and your mind is racing through every possible catastrophe that could happen tomorrow? Not the dramatic ones, the quiet ones. The email you might have worded wrong, the conversation where you said too much or too little, the sense that if you relax for even 1 second, everything you've built will collapse around you. You've been holding it together for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to not be holding it together. Your jaw is clenched even when you sleep. Your shoulders live somewhere up near your ears. And there's this voice, this constant, vigilant voice that never stops narrating all the ways you need to be better, faster, more careful, more controlled. People call you reliable, responsible, the one who has it all together, and you smile and nod because that's what you're supposed to do. But inside, you're running on fumes. Inside, you're one bad day away from shattering. Here's the thing nobody tells you about going crazy. It doesn't happen because you're weak. It happens because you've been strong for too long, in all the wrong ways. It happens because the very mechanism that kept you safe as a child, the hypervigilance, the perfectionism, the pathological responsibility, has become the cage you can't escape as an adult. This is the brutal paradox. The thing that saved you is now the thing that's killing you. And you can feel it, can't you? That tightness in your chest that never quite goes away. That sense that you're always performing, always managing, always 3 steps ahead of disaster. You've been so busy keeping the plates spinning that you've forgotten you're allowed to put them down. Going crazy isn't a breakdown. It's a breakthrough that got interrupted. It's what happens when your nervous system finally says, I can't carry this anymore. Let's talk about what actually happened to you, not the sanitized version, the real one. Somewhere in your developmental years, maybe you were 6, maybe you were 10, your environment became unpredictable. Maybe it was a parent struggling with addiction or mental illness. Maybe it was financial instability that made every day feel uncertain. Maybe it was emotional volatility where you never knew which version of your caregiver would come home. Or maybe it was just chronic emotional neglect dressed up as normalcy. Whatever it was, your child brain made a calculation. If I can just be good enough, controlled enough, perfect enough, I can make this chaos stop. This is what psychologists call parentification, when a child takes on emotional or practical responsibilities far beyond their developmental capacity. But it goes deeper than just doing the dishes or mediating arguments. It's a neurological rewiring. Your brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, went into permanent overdrive. You developed what trauma researchers call hypervigilance, a state of constant scanning for danger that never switches off. Think of your nervous system like a house alarm. In a healthy system, the alarm activates when there's a threat, then deactivates when safety returns. But your alarm got stuck in the on position. Every sound became a potential threat. Every interaction became something to monitor and manage. You became the alarm system for everyone around you. And here's where it gets insidious. This strategy worked. Your vigilance kept you safe. Your perfectionism earned you praise. Your emotional management kept the family stable. You got rewarded for betraying your own needs. Neuroscientists call this allostatic load, the cumulative wear and tear on the body from chronic stress. Your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the system that regulates stress hormones, never learned to rest. Cortisol became your baseline. Your nervous system learned that safety equals constant control. The developmental psychologist Donald Winnicott had a term for what you lost: the true self. In trying to become what everyone needed, you buried who you actually were. You developed what attachment theorists call an insecure avoidant or anxious preoccupied attachment style, either learning to need nothing from anyone or becoming so attuned to others' emotional states that you lost track of your own. Imagine a plant that learns to grow in the dark. It doesn't just lack sunlight, it fundamentally reorganizes its cellular structure around scarcity. That's what happened to your psyche. You didn't just adapt to instability, you built your entire identity around preventing it. But nobody tells you about the cost. Nobody talks about what you sacrificed on the altar of being the stable one. You sacrificed softness, the ability to be clumsy, to be wrong, to be human without it feeling like a moral failure. You sacrificed rest, real rest, the kind where you're not strategizing or planning or replaying conversations in your head. You sacrificed spontaneity because spontaneity requires trust that things will work out even if you're not orchestrating every detail. Most devastatingly, you sacrificed the belief that you are lovable just as you are, without earning it, without performing it, without negotiating for it through your usefulness. This is what Carl Jung meant when he talked about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we exile because they threaten our survival strategy. You exiled your anger because anger meant conflict, and conflict meant instability. You exiled your vulnerability because vulnerability meant risk, and risk meant danger. You exiled your desires because desire meant disappointing someone, and you couldn't afford to disappoint anyone. But here's the philosophical weight of it. Every time you betrayed yourself to keep the peace, you taught yourself that you don't matter as much as everyone else's comfort. Every time you swallowed your truth to manage someone else's emotions, you carved the belief deeper into your psyche. My existence is conditional. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." But you were never allowed to be master of yourself. You were too busy being master of everyone else's emotional weather, and so you became an adult who can't sit still, an adult who fills every silence with productivity, an adult who feels guilty for having needs because needs feel like burdens, and you've spent your entire life trying not to be a burden. There's a specific kind of grief in this, an invisible grief. It's the grief of never getting to be a child when you were a child. The grief of always having to have the answer, to be the strong one, to hold it together. It's the grief of waking up at 35 or 40 and realizing you don't actually know who you are underneath all the coping mechanisms. You've been running the emotional emergency room of your family, your friend groups, your workplace, for decades. And nobody ever asked you if you needed a break. Nobody ever told you that you could collapse without the world ending. So when you finally do go crazy, when the panic attacks start or the depression swallows you whole or you find yourself screaming in your car or crying in the shower for reasons you can't articulate, it's not a malfunction. It's your psyche finally saying, "Enough, I can't pretend anymore." Let's talk about what this actually looks like in your adult life, because the patterns are everywhere once you know what to look for. You might be someone who cannot delegate, not because you're a control freak by nature, but because delegation requires trusting that things will get done without your intervention. And trust was the first casualty of your childhood. So you take on more and more until you're drowning, because drowning feels safer than depending on someone who might fail you. You might be someone who overfunctions in relationships. You become the therapist, the problem solver, the emotional manager, always anticipating needs, always smoothing over tension, always making sure everyone else is okay. And when your partner asks, "What do you need?" you go blank. Because your needs got erased so long ago that accessing them feels like learning a foreign language. You might be someone who mistakes anxiety for intuition. That knot in your stomach before a social event, you call it a bad feeling. That catastrophic thinking, you call it being realistic. But it's not intuition. It's your nervous system running threat assessment protocols on situations that aren't actually dangerous. You've become so skilled at predicting danger that you manufacture it even in safe spaces. You might be someone who self-sabotages success. Just when things are going well, you pick a fight or quit the job or end the relationship. Not because you're afraid of success, but because success means vulnerability. Success means you have something to lose. And losing has always been too expensive, so you'd rather control the collapse than risk being blindsided by it. You might be someone with a profound inability to receive. Compliments make you uncomfortable. Help feels like debt. Love feels like obligation. Because receiving requires vulnerability, And vulnerability requires trust that the other person won't use your openness as ammunition later. So you deflect every kindness and wonder why you feel so alone. You might be someone who experiences guilt as a constant baseline emotion. Guilt for resting. Guilt for setting boundaries. Guilt for not being available every time someone needs you. You've internalized the belief that your worth is measured by your utility, so any moment you're not being useful feels like theft. You might be someone who lives in the future, never the present. Always planning, strategizing, preparing for the next crisis. Because the present moment requires presence, and presence requires feeling. And feeling means confronting all the grief and anger and exhaustion you've been outrunning for decades. You might be someone who can't tolerate other people's negative emotions. The moment someone expresses sadness or anger, you jump into fix-it mode. Not because you're naturally helpful, but because their distress activates your childhood alarm system that says, emotional dysregulation equals danger. Must restore equilibrium immediately. Here's what you need to understand. These aren't character flaws. These are adaptive survival strategies from a nervous system that never learned to turn off the alarm. You're not broken. You're not too much or not enough. You're someone whose brain learned to survive chaos by trying to control everything. And that strategy is now eating you alive in an adult world that requires rest, trust, and imperfection. The unlearning begins with witnessing, not fixing, not optimizing, not strategizing, just witnessing. Witnessing the little girl or boy inside you who was so scared and had to grow up so fast. Witnessing the pattern without judgment, saying, oh, this is what I learned to do to stay safe, and it made sense then, but it doesn't serve me anymore. So how do you heal from this? How do you undo decades of nervous system conditioning? First, you have to understand that healing isn't about becoming more controlled. It's about releasing control. It's about teaching your body, not your mind, but your actual body, that safety can exist without vigilance. This is the work of somatic therapy, learning to track sensation, to notice where you hold tension, to practice the radical act of softening. Your body is where the trauma lives. All the cognitive insight in the world won't matter if your nervous system still believes it's under threat. You need to practice what psychologists call reparenting, learning to give yourself what you never received. Permission to rest without earning it. Permission to make mistakes without catastrophizing. Permission to have needs without shame. This isn't indulgence. This is developmental repair. You need to grieve. Really grieve. Not the tidy, socially acceptable grief, but the messy, ugly, rage-filled grief of everything you lost by having to be so strong. Grief is how we metabolize loss, and you've been too busy surviving to mourn. You need to practice what Brené Brown calls vulnerability hangover tolerance. The ability to be seen in your imperfection without fleeing or self-destructing. Start small. Tell someone you're struggling. Ask for help without a 5-paragraph explanation of why you deserve it. Let someone see you cry without apologizing for your tears. You need to develop what internal family systems therapy calls self-energy. That calm, compassionate, curious witness who can observe your patterns without fusing with them. The part of you that can say, ah, there's the hypervigilance again. I see you. You were trying to keep me safe. But we're okay now. Most importantly, you need to choose softness even when every instinct screams at you to armor up. Softness is not weakness. Softness is the most courageous thing someone with your history can practice. Because softness requires trust. Trust that you can fall apart and still be whole. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron wrote, "The most fundamental aggression to ourselves is to remain ignorant by not having the courage to look at ourselves honestly and gently." That's the work. Not achieving more control, but surrendering it. Not becoming more perfect, but becoming more human. Going crazy wasn't your failure. It was your psyche's last-ditch attempt to force you to stop betraying yourself. It was the emergency brake your body pulled when you wouldn't pull it yourself. And here's the truth they don't tell you in self-help books. You don't heal from this by becoming stronger. You heal by finally allowing yourself to be weak. You heal by learning that your worth isn't earned, it's inherent. You heal by discovering that the world doesn't collapse when you stop holding it together. You are not the crisis manager of other people's emotions. You are not responsible for preventing every possible catastrophe. You are not required to have it all together all the time. You are allowed to be a beautiful, messy, imperfect human who rests and makes mistakes and asks for help and still deserves love. The goal was never to be fixed. The goal is to become whole. And wholeness includes all the parts you exiled. The tired parts, the angry parts, the parts that just want to lie in the sun and do nothing productive and exist without justification. That 3 a.m. racing mind, it's trying to protect you with the only strategy it knows. But you can teach it a new way. Slowly, gently, with the kind of patience you've spent your whole life extending to everyone but yourself. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so we can continue exploring the invisible architecture of our inner worlds together. You were never crazy. You were just carrying too much for too long. And now it's time to put it down.